Hello everyone, welcome to the course on Global Trade and Commerce. In the previous sessions of this course, we have seen how the multilateral trading system led by the WTO is losing its efficacy. As a result of that, we have seen the mushrooming of regional trading agreements and FTAs and RTAs and the mega FTAs like RCEP. We have also seen how the world trade is collapsing because of the pandemic. Today I am going to tell you all about the trade war that is taking place between the United States and China. So basically, what is a trade war? A trade war is a situation in which countries retaliate against each other and impose tariff barriers on each other, including import quotas. It's basically a tit for tat response for global tensions. This is what is called a trade war, and it's basically the side effect of the protectionist policies that most countries in the world follow. So the most common example of a trade war is the current trade war that's going on between the United States and China. So why does a trade war happen? So if one country perceives unfair trade practices by the other country, then there is a tit for tat reaction. It makes certain imported goods less attractive to the consumers, and this is how a trade war begins. Now, in the case of the US-China trade war, it was basically started by the US President Donald Trump in the year 2018. President Trump imposed tariffs on two important goods, one is steel and one is aluminium, and also solar panels and washing machines. He imposed a tariff of nearly 25% on imports of steel and 10% tariffs on the imports of aluminium coming from China. And this amounted to, this 25% of tariffs that he imposed on the Chinese goods amounted to nearly 50 to 60 billion exports of China to the United States. So why did President Trump do this? What is the reason behind this trade war? It was basically to give a boost to the US economy and to give a boost to the aluminium and steel industries in the United States, and also the fact that the United States has a huge trade deficit with China led President Trump to kind of impose this trade war on China. Now, if you look at the US-China trade war, the trade deficit that exists between the two countries, if you look at on your screen, the US exports to China were $187 billion, whereas the imports from China were $524 billion. So there is this massive gap between exports and imports, which is kind of irritating the United States, which has led the United States to fight this trade war against China. The US trade deficit with China was nearly $419 billion in the year 2018, and the trade deficit exists because US exports to China were only 120 billion, whereas imports from China were to the tune of nearly 540 billion. So this massive gap had to be bridged somewhere, and the only alternative that President Trump could think of was imposing high tariff on Chinese goods. So basically, there is a lot of tension. The latest developments I am going to tell you about the trade war. There is a lot of tension between the United States and China, and this has been recently exacerbated, as you know, by the pandemic which has come from Wuhan in China. As a result of that, the entire world seems to be kind of very unhappy and upset with the Chinese policies, and in fact the whole world has come together. The global cooperation is taking place on a massive scale against China for hiding information about the pandemic. And the trade war that was already there between United States and China has only escalated this tension. Because the talks between China and the United States have not been going on well, in January this year, President Trump imposed additional tariffs of 25% on 200 billion worth of Chinese goods, and the negotiations continued. But in the last few months, the negotiations have come to a standstill and in fact collapsed post the pandemic. So basically, this move by Trump has been triggered by erosion of trust or backtracking of commitments by China that it had made during the negotiations with the US, and therefore it has led to further escalation of tariff by the United States. the US trade representative said that the talks will continue, but tariffs at the same time will continue to be imposed on Chinese goods. The United States has been pressurizing China to bring about massive structural reforms in its economy and to bring in better protection for US intellectual property and stopped forced technology transfer from the US companies to China. What happens is that when a firm establishes itself in China, especially an American firm, the Chinese government and the Chinese firms force the Americans to transfer technology from the American firms to the US firms, from the American firms to the Chinese firms, thereby resulting in loss of intellectual property for the US firms, and also the US is insisting to China to stop the cyber threat of American trade secrets. So, all this has led to a lot of pressure between the Chinese and the Americans, and the US also expects China to give better market access facilities to the US products and companies and reduce subsidies given to its industry so that the American products are also competitive in the Chinese market, and this is the only way the trade deficit between the two countries can be bridged. So, what is the impact of this trade war on India? Is India isolated from the trade war? Yes, to a large extent India is isolated from the trade war. Even though United States and China are India's two largest trading partners and nearly 15 to 18% of our total exports go to the United States, still we would say that the trade war has not been so damaging for India. In fact, India may have been able to gain traction in some of the products like jewelry, garments, etc., where the Chinese have not been able to enter the US markets. Therefore, there is a possibility that the US has been buying from India. In fact, the Chinese soya bean import tariff on US could provide openings for the Indian soya bean market as well. So, to some extent India has only benefited from the trade war, but the bad news is that this trade war cannot continue and India is going to be impacted at some point of time. Now, there is also an opportunity for India in this trade war that there could be diversion of investment flows from China to the United States. Since this trade war is going on between the two countries, many investors, seeing uncertainty in the Chinese policies, could divert their investment towards India. Now, what has happened to the American investment, the impact on the American investment due to the trade war? According to the UN Conference on Trade and Development, investment into the United States fell by nearly 40% to $275 billion from $457 billion in the year 2016. So, there has been a massive decline in foreign investment globally and also within the United States because of the trade war. So, what is it? Now, China and US have come to some kind of an understanding in the recent months. They have struck a deal and this deal was signed on the 15th of January 2020. Now, what are the main features of this deal? As a part of this deal, China has agreed to buy additional 200 billion of American goods and services by 2021 and crack down on business practices that the Trump administration has criticized. The deal also includes significant commitments from China to buy agricultural products from the Americans as well as airplanes, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas. So, the text of the accord does not provide much information to determine how it will work in practice, and it is unclear whether China will interpret it differently than the United States. So, basically China has agreed to buy these products from the United States for only 2 years. This agreement says the countries project the trajectory of increased purchases would continue only through 2025. So, what happens after that? Whether the trade war will continue, the tariffs will continue to escalate, we do not know. What happens to China's existing contracts with other countries for products like soya beans? Will the purchases distort commodities markets? There is absolutely no idea. So, basically how is the deal going to be enforced? It is basically through the bilateral evaluation and its dispute resolution officers to receive and evaluate complaints whether China has been sticking to the deal that the United States and China has signed. But a lot remains to be done. Only time will tell whether the two countries will go ahead and solve this dispute, which is majorly impacting the world economy. Thank you.